Poštovani gledaoci, dobrodošli u Granice Istoka. Ja sam Harun Karčić. U ovom izdanju emisije analiziramo šta se promijenilo na Bliskom istoku 7 godina nakon početka arapskog proljeća. Jesu li revolucije arapskog proljeća bile uzaludne? Je li mjerilo uspjeha revolucije u tome koliko je uspješno uspostavljen zapadni demokratski sistem vladavine? Je li bilo realno očekivati da države prijeđu iz diktature u stabilne parlamentarne demokratije preko noći? Sve su to pitanja na koja mnogi analitičari daju oprečne odgovore. 7 godina je prošlo od početka arapskog proljeća, kada su se obični građani usprotivili autokratskim režimima, tražeći slobodu, dignitet, posao i transparentnost. Prije razgovora sa našim analitičarima, pogledajmo uvodni prilog o mladiću koji je u Siriji počeo proteste protiv predsjednika Bashara al-Assada.
أنا سامر صياصني عمري 21 سنة ولما بلشت قصتي كان عمري 14 سنة. يعني كان في ثورات قايمة بالدول العربية نحضر على أخبار الثورات. قمت أنا وأصدقائي لي كتبنا على جدار المدرسة جاك الدور يا دكتور. فما فيش بعديها فترة يعني قصيرة داهمونا الأمن. قاموا هددوا أبوي إنه يعني لا عاطف نجيب، يعني قال له أبوي لا بتسلمنا ابنك لا بناخذ كل شيء يعني نسوان بالدار وأولاد صغار ومعك مهلة 24 ساعة بدك تكون مسلمه. يجي أبوي انجبر هون يسلمني. ترى تفاجأنا إنه يعني اجوا أخذونا من الفرع اللي كنا فيه بالشام. بعد ما سلمونا لأهالينا تفاجأنا إنهم جايبيننا مثل ما يعني زف مكيفين فينا إنه طلعنا على الجامع العمري وإنه الناس غاد مجتمعوا ومظاهرات وتهتف إسقاط النظام.
Antivladina revolucija u Siriji počela je 15. marta 2011. godine. Nekoliko mjeseci kasnije pretvorila se u građanski, a potom regionalni i sad međunarodni rat. Detaljnije o tome sam razgovarao sa Kamalom Alamom, sigurnosnim analitičarem iz Londona. Now, Kamal, once again, hello and welcome to Al Jazeera. Now, many analysts were predicting the fall of President Bashar al-Assad in 2012. The year is 2018 now, and Bashar is still firmly in control of vast swaths of Syria. The number of sympathizers that he has in Europe and the United States has been increasing over the past years. What factors enabled, internal and external factors, enabled President Assad to maintain his grip on power?
There are a number of factors. I think internally, if you look at it, Bashar al-Assad was a popular president. He was a young president who had the support of cross-sectarian groups. A lot of people said the army is going to defect, but actually the army didn't really defect as far as the professional army goes. He has a lot of support from the rich and the middle-class Sunnis. So there's this myth that he was against the Sunnis. He's not. All the biggest and most powerful Sunni families, the business families are with him. Of course, the Christians are with him. And one could say that the majority of the big cities are with him. And that's why if you look at the war, he always maintained support in the big cities. And of course, externally, he had support from Russia, Iran, but also a lot of Arab states. Egypt has always been supportive of President Assad, the Egyptian army and Egyptian intelligence. Algeria, which is the largest Arab army, they've been supportive of President Assad as well. The BRICS countries, China, India, Brazil. China has become the biggest investor in Syria. So there are a number of factors. The Russians didn't want another Arab government to fall. They'd seen enough of regime change done by the Americans, so this was stopped by them. And of course Iran has interests as well. So the big reason President Assad has been able to stay, of course you have external factors, but there's also many internal factors, and none the least massive support from segments of Iraq and Lebanon as well.
Now you mentioned Russia. Russia's intervention in Syria reversed the Assad regime's downward trajectory and gave Moscow a prominent new role. What are Moscow's long-term objectives in the Middle East? Is it only about maintaining a military base in Latakia, or?
I think it's of course, the main strategic asset is the military base, but I think it goes beyond that. It's about Russia's prestige. Russia was not happy with the US invasion of Iraq in 2003. And then if you fast forward 8 years, in 2011, when NATO went into Libya, NATO had given a guarantee to Putin they won't remove Gaddafi. They're only going to protect the civilians. But I think that was a big blow to Russian economic interests in North Africa. And I think that's when Putin made a decision that Russia will be dominant in the Arab world again. And this is the first time since the Arab-Israeli conflict of 1973 that we see Russia resurgent. So I think the interests are economic, strategic, and prestige. Because after the war in Syria, all of a sudden, we see the Egyptians buying weapons from the Russians. We see the Saudis and the Qataris, and even Turkey is buying the S-400. So Russia's prestige is at an all-time high, perhaps the highest it's ever been since 1973.
What message did Russia try to send to Middle Eastern leaders by saving President Assad?
Definitely. I mean, if you look at American history, the Americans have never stood by any of their allies. You're their friend 1 minute, the next minute you're dead. You know, we've seen that of the Shah of Iran. We saw that with Hosni Mubarak, Egypt. We of course saw Gaddafi, who reached out to the West, and look what happened. Saddam, you know, Saddam was America's best friend. They helped him fight Iran. Look what happened to Saddam. So the message is, America is not a trustworthy ally, whilst Russia stands behind its friends. And they've definitely proven that in Syria. More than any other Arab country, no ally has come to its support, such as Russia and Syria.
Now, is the myriad of alliances in Syria today beginning to look less like non-state actors, but more like middle power rivalries between the United States, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, perhaps?
Definitely, because if you look at the big power conflict between the US and Russia, Syria has nothing to do with it. It's all about egos of the Americans and the Russians. It's linked to Kiev, Crimea. You know, there's a tussle going on between the US and Russia, even in Central Asia. So that's not specific to Syria. Then we look at Turkey and Saudi Arabia. Both these countries are fighting for leadership of the Islamic world. So for them, it's again a prestige thing. The Turks and the Saudis do not see eye to eye. Then of course there's Iran and Saudi Arabia. So we see all these rivalries coming. And for the first time, I think we see China emerging in a conflict. China have military forces in Syria now. They are there because China faces a direct threat from the Uyghur fighters. So it's an international war. Of course, it's the Syrians that are suffering, but it's very much a world war within Syria.
Would you say that Ankara has changed its rhetoric towards President Bashar al-Assad? Because the Turkish daily Yeni Shafak has recently called for a rethink in ties with Syria.
Absolutely. No, I mean, Ankara has no other option. If you look at, 6 years ago, Erdogan called Assad his closest brother. In fact, Erdogan was always...
They spent their vacations together.
Yeah, they were vacationing the spring, summer, winter on the yacht. So they were like really close friends. Their wives were friends, their in-laws. So of course, this is something that can restart. It looks difficult, but the fact of the matter is, Turkey has trapped itself, unfortunately. Turkey also realized that America cannot be trusted, because America is backing the Kurdish groups which are fighting Turkey. So for that, Turkey now know they also need to turn to Russia and Damascus. So I think there are a lot of calls from Turkish newspapers, the Turkish opposition, and even within the AKP party, that they must talk to President Assad as the only way to help end the war, which Turkey are also facing on their southern border.
Now, would Turkey rather have President Assad's troops on its southern flank or Kurdish Marxist rebels?
I think definitely the Syrian Arab Army and the President Assad being in control of the border, because the Kurdish Marxist groups are a direct threat to Turkish national security. These groups help PKK, which is a terrorist organization. So the link between the Syrian Kurdish groups and the Turkish Kurdish groups is extreme danger. For that reason alone, Turkey would like President Assad and the Syrian army to retake the border.
Now, The Guardian's Martin Chulov has recently written an article about an existing Iranian land corridor spanning from Tehran all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. Exactly to what extent are Iranians able to exercise their political and military influence in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Yemen?
So I've always said this. I think Iranian influence in Lebanon and Iraq is very different to Iranian influence in Syria.
Why?
Because Lebanon, after the war, you had Hezbollah, which became a political party and direct affiliations with Iran. Same with Iraq. Syria has never been a puppet of Iran. The Syrian governments and the army is very much an Arab nationalist army. It doesn't have a religious ideology, whilst in Iraq and Lebanon you have a Shia ideology. In Syria, in the governments and the army, there's no such thing. And this is why, as I mentioned, the Syrians get support from Egypt and Algeria. Egypt and Algeria are secular, authoritarian militaries. So when people talk about a land corridor, yes, it's there, but Iran doesn't have actual political influence on President Assad or how the Syrian state functions within. Their allies, of course, Iran has contributed greatly to Syrian success on the battlefield, but I think the Russian success is far more than what the Iranians gave to the Syrian state. And this is why I think, unlike Iraq and Lebanon, Syria can never be a vassal of Iran. It's very much its own entity, because the ideology of Syria and Iran are completely separate.
All right, Kamal Alam, it was a pleasure having you in Al Jazeera.
Thanks.
Nakon arapskog proljeća, zbog nestabilnosti brojnih zemalja, procvjetala je trgovina oružja. Prema podacima Međunarodnog instituta za izučavanje mira u Štokholmu, svjetska trgovina oružja je porasla za 10% između 2013. i 2017. godine u poređenju sa prethodne 4 godine. Amerika je najveći izvoznik oružja u svijetu. Njihovo oružje kupuje 98 zemalja svijeta. Od 2009. godine do 2017. Sjedinjene Američke Države su povećale ukupan izvoz oružja za čak 25%. Rusija je drugi najveći izvoznik oružja u svijetu, ali je njen izvoz pao za 7,1% u istom periodu. Američki izvoz oružja je 58% veći od ruskog. Osim SAD-a i Rusije, Francuska, Njemačka, Kina i Velika Britanija su također glavni izvoznici oružja. Između 2013. i 2017. godine 32% od ukupno izvezenog oružja u svijetu kupile su zemlje Bliskog istoka. To je dvostruko više nego što je bio slučaj u periodu od 2009. do 2013. godine. Sjedinjene Američke Države, Velika Britanija i Francuska najveći su izvoznici oružja u zemlje Bliskog istoka. U proteklih 5 godina gotovo polovina svih izvoza oružja iz SAD-a otišla je u zemlje Bliskog istoka. Najviše je kupila Saudijska Arabija, zatim Egipat i Ujedinjeni Arapski Emirati. Gotovo 50% ukupnog izvezenog britanskog oružja otišlo je za Saudijsku Arabiju, koja je povećala uvoz oružja za nevjerojatnih 225%. Za razliku od Saudijske Arabije, Iran se ne nalazi na listi 40 najvećih uvoznika oružja. Preciznije, samo 1% oružja uvezenog na Bliski istok kupuje Iran. Izrael je također povećao uvoz oružja za 125%, pretežno iz SAD-a, Njemačke i Italije. Ranije sam razgovarao sa Davidom Hearstom, glavnim urednikom internetskog portala MiddleEastEyea, o ulozi Sjedinjenih Američkih Država, ali i zaljevskih monarhija, na politička dešavanja širom Bliskog istoka. Now, David, once again, hello and welcome to Al Jazeera. Now, what effect will the sacking of Rex Tillerson have on events in the Middle East?
Well, one way of describing the administration of Donald Trump is America at war with itself. It really has been a very, very tumultuous period that I can remember as a political observer. Certainly anything I've known in the White House. Now, Tillerson started off by being a colleague of Trump. He came from business, he came from Exxon, he was an oil man, he wasn't a professional diplomat. And gradually he grew into his own center of gravity, as you like, and he was one of the brakes on Trump. He was not in favor of the blockade of Qatar when it was announced. He tried his best to rectify that. He certainly wasn't in favor of tearing up the nuclear agreement with Iran, and he tried to stop that as well. Now, him going means that that brake on Trump is no longer, and he will have a much more dangerous, in my view, Secretary of State in Pompeo, much more ideological, much less concerned about the effects, already the effects that the Trump administration has had on the Middle East has been disastrous. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not optimistic that it will improve under Pompeo.
The big difference between 2011, when the Arab Spring started, and today is that in addition to all the wars and the failed states, there's a full-blown crisis of liberal democracy in Europe and the United States. How has this licensed the behavior of this new generation of Middle Eastern autocrats, or dictators, if you will?
Well, what Trump provides them is chaos. And chaos is actually quite useful in a sort of revolutionary sense. And so you've now got a whole bunch of young Middle East autocrats. I'm talking about Mohammed bin Zayed, I'm talking about Mohammed bin Salman, and indeed Sisi himself, the president of Egypt, all of whom depend on this chaos to advance their own interests. And one of the things they're trying to do is they're trying to modernize dictatorship. They're trying to modernize their autocracy. They know that the Arab Spring provided a fundamental challenge to their legitimacy, and they're trying to crush it for all time. And so they're using Trump for their own ends, and their own ends basically, it's not moderate Islam that they're on about, it's not economic reform that they're on about. In fact, they put the economic reformers in prison. What they're on about is the perpetuation and the modernization of their own autocracy, and Trump is very useful for that.
Now, when Mohammed bin Salman visited London recently, he received a very warm welcome. Why is it in the interest of the United Kingdom to have such close ties with Mohammed bin Salman?
Well, he received a warm welcome from the government. He received quite a rough welcome from the political opposition. And as far as Londoners were concerned, they were bemused by all the portraits that had gone up all over the place, which of course he paid for. He then filmed those portraits, the billboards of, and then said to his own audience in Saudi Arabia, "Look, we're being welcomed." So there was a bit of artifice involved in the whole thing. Cynically, what Britain is hoping for, it's looking for commercial arrangements after it leaves Europe. Yeah. So a Brexit British government, or Brexit-minded British government, is looking for a new set of contracts for the Typhoon Eurofighter. It's also looking for part or all of the business of the initial share offering of the world's biggest oil company, Aramco. Now, the one thing that is useful, or that Britain, the London Stock Exchange, can offer Saudi Arabia, is that the JASTA legislation, the 9/11 legislation in America, does not apply to Britain. And so it can offer a share offering which will not be challenged in the courts. And it's also trying to bend the rule of transparency, because the other thing that's happening here is that if you actually offer if a government offers an initial share offering of what is a state holding, which is a nationalized entity, it has to provide records. Saudi Arabia is not going to do that, because if it provided the records, people would see how much the royal family has been taking creaming off the top. So London is bending over backwards basically to bend the rules for this share offering, because it's worth so much money. If the share offering, if Aramco is valued at $2 trillion, then 5% of $2 trillion would be about $100 billion.
Which is a lot of money.
Which is a lot of money for a stock market that's losing quite a lot of its business to Europe.
Now, the Saudi and Emirati leaderships have dramatically overhauled their regional policies in recent years. When did this shift in foreign policy happen, and why? Why have they opted for a more proactive and robust foreign policy in the Middle East?
Well, it's been a bit of a helter-skelter, and they've shifted from one strategic enemy to another. After 2011, after the Arab Spring, and certainly after the election of Mohammed Morsi in Egypt, King Abdullah, the late King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia, identified the Muslim Brotherhood as the main strategic threat, political Islam as the main strategic threat to Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, Iran was also gaining control and power on Saudi Arabia's doorstep. So it has swung from the Muslim Brotherhood to Iran, back to the Muslim Brotherhood again. They've never really decided who their strategic enemy has been. And unlike the Iranians, the Saudis, who backed the Syrian opposition and then withdrew from it, are fickle allies. The Iranians, when they back a group, and when they back it, they're strategic about it. The Saudis will quite happily drop the alliances the next day. And so Saudi foreign policy has been a game of diminishing returns. And I think Saudi Arabia as such, as a country, is much weaker in foreign policy terms than it was under King Abdullah.
Now, the Emiratis, a few years ago, they had their appointment on the Saudi royal court, Khalid al-Tuwaijri. Exactly how much leverage do the Emiratis have over the Saudis today, over Mohammed bin Salman specifically?
Well, they never give up. And in fact, when it came to the Paris coup that I described in the Middle East Eye, they lost Tuwaijri, they lost Meteb, they lost quite a few of their placemen that they needed. But MBZ was quite clever and shrewd. He found a way back in, and his entry point back into the royal family was then a 30-year-old prince called Mohammed bin Salman. Now, what he needed from Mohammed bin Zayed was advice. What he needed was power. And so MBZ tutored him on how to become a king. The first thing he said was, you have to establish a relationship with Israel. Next, you have to establish a relationship with America. And next, after that, you have to get rid of your elder cousin, who was Mohammed bin Naif, who was in fact a Washington favorite. He was liked by the people like Petraeus, like he
was their security man.
He was their security man. He was their counterintelligence man, and he had experience. And so the first thing that the ambitious, completely inexperienced prince with no political track record, no real political education either, he'd never really been educated outside the kingdom. First thing he had to do was poison the atmosphere in Washington of his elder cousin, bin Naif. And he did that through the Emirati ambassador,
Yusuf al-Otaiba.
Yusuf Otaiba. And he did a very effective job. Now, all of this has come to light through the emails that MiddleEastEyea and others have published, which are basically detailed an extremely elaborate, extremely well-funded, and extremely consistent plot or a lobbying campaign to turn Washington against one Saudi prince and in favor of another. And to a large extent, it's worked.
All right, David, thank you so much for speaking to us. It was a pleasure having you on Al Jazeera.
Okay, thank you.
Egipatski general Abdel Fattah el-Sisi svrgnuo je prvog demokratski izabranog predsjednika Egipta Mohameda Mursija u julu 2013. godine. Od tada do danas naredio je hapšenje brojnih političkih oponenata, nevladinih aktivista i novinara. Na nedavno održanim izborima u Egiptu ponovo je pobjedio na izborima.
U dugačkoj historiji vojnih diktatura u Egiptu zabilježen je i kratak period demokratske vlasti. Bilo je to 2012. kada je predsjedničku zakletvu položio Mohamed Mursi. Ipak, trijumf prvog demokratski izabranog predsjednika trajao je svega 12 mjeseci. Njegova organizacija, Muslimanska braća, sada je u Egiptu proglašena terorističkom, što oni negiraju.
Ne postoji mogućnost za bavljenje politikom. Niko ne smije izraziti stav, niko se ne usuđuje smatrati ozbiljnim protukandidatom Sisiju, jer vojska sve kontrolira.
Muslimanska braća su na meti egipatskih vlasti već skoro 100 godina. Vjeruje se kako je prvog lidera ove organizacije, Hasana el-Bene, 1949. ubila egipatska tajna policija. Uprkos podršci koju su pružili Nasseru, on je, nakon što je prigrabio vlast 1954. zabranio muslimansku braću. Tada su hiljade članova ove organizacije završile u zatvoru ili su napustili zemlju. Po naređenju Anvara Sadata, Nasserovog nasljednika, 1966. pogubljen je Sejd Kutb, jedan od lidera muslimanske braće. Propali su i svi napori da se 80. godina ova organizacija politički etablira. Muslimanska braća dobila su legitimitet tek 2011. nakon svrgavanja Hosnija Mubaraka, kada je na izborima pobjedila stranka Slobode i pravde na čelu sa Mohamedom Mursijem. Nakon godinu dana vlasti, general Abdel Fattah Sisi izveo je vojni udar, a Mursija smjestio u zatvor. Muslimanska braća optužila su vojsku da je vodila paralelne strukture vlasti, te da nikada nije dozvolila da zaživi prva demokratski izabrana vlast u Egiptu.
The main mistake is actually handing over
Glavna greška bila je predati vojsci na upravljanje prelazni period nakon svrgavanja Hosnija Mubaraka. Imali su dovoljno vremena da ponište sve uspjehe revolucije.
Poput drugih vojnih vladara Egipta, i Sisi je zatvorio hiljade pristalica muslimanske braće. Isposlovao je da ova organizacija i u regiji bude proglašena terorističkom. Članovi muslimanske braće optužuju vladajuću kliku da guši slobode, te upozoravaju kako bi to moglo izazvati ekstremne reakcije u Egiptu. Elvedin Čurovac, Al Jazeera.
Arapske monarhije bilo kakve pozve na demokratizaciju Bliskog istoka vide kao prijetnju vlastitoj stabilnosti. Upravo iz tog razloga finansiraju kontrarevolucionarne pokrete širom Bliskog istoka. Istovremeno, poraz liberalnih demokratija u Europi i Sjedinjenim Američkim Državama ohrabrio je bliskoistočne autokrate da nastave sa svojim represivnim mjerama protiv vlastitih građana. Koliko će to trajati i hoće li se nezadovoljne narodne mase ponovo pobuniti, pitanje je na koje trenutno niko nema odgovor. Bilo je to sve u ovom izdanju Granica Istoka. Cijelu emisiju možete gledati na našem web portalu balkans.aljazeera.net. Hvala na pažnji.